Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to This Explainer, where we're unpacking a truly incredible masterclass on building a practical toolkit for effective human connection. We're drawing all our insights today from Julian Treasure's fascinating interview on the Diary of a CEO. Now, if you don't know him, Julian is a guy whose TED Talks on communication have racked up well over 100 million views. Seriously, 100 million. So we're going to break down his exact frameworks to make sure your voice isn't just heard, but, actually felt.
So let's kick things off with a pretty startling paradox that Treasure points out right out of the gate. Think about it. Despite communicating every single day, whether we're leading teams, pitching ideas, or just trying to build personal relationships, we're never actually taught the mechanical skills of speaking and listening. We spend years and years in school learning to read and write, but almost zero formal time learning how to effectively speak to one another, or, actually, perhaps even more importantly, how to listen. It's kind of crazy when you think about it.
And the data behind our human habits here is just fascinating. Treasure actually delivered separate TED Talks, one on speaking and one on listening. Well, get this. His talk on speaking has 5 times the views of his talk on listening. 5 times. This just brilliantly illustrates our total cultural obsession with broadcasting. We're all so desperate for the validation of being heard, but we severely neglect the receiving end of the entire equation.
Well, today we are going to fix that imbalance. Here's our agenda. We're covering 1, the communication crisis, and 2, the 7 deadly speaking sins. Then we'll move into the constructive stuff with 3, the HAIL framework, and 4, mastering your vocal toolbox. Finally, we'll wrap up with 5, the power of storytelling, and 6, the art of listening. We're stepping through the whole shebang, moving from those destructive habits straight into highly constructive frameworks.
All right, jumping right into sections 1 and 2, the communication crisis and the 7 deadly speaking sins. To build better habits, we first have to shine a light on the conversational sins that are kind of ruining our relationships right now.
See, we routinely commit these destructive errors without even realizing it. Things like constant negativity, always finding what's wrong with a situation, or judgmentalism. Think of the parent who sees a 95% test score and immediately says, well, what happened to the other 5%? Then there's the ego's burning need to always be right, which honestly just pushes people away. But actually, the most subtle sin is what Treasure calls fixing. This is when we invalidate someone's emotions just to avoid our own discomfort. Treasure shares this heartbreaking story of an aunt whose baby sister was stillborn. The family simply never spoke of it again because they didn't want to upset her. But by trying to fix that sadness with silence, they basically taught her that people can't be trusted with the truth. Smothering emotions like that is incredibly damaging.
Moving on to Section 3, the HAIL framework. To counter those deadly sins, Treasure introduces a foundational framework to make sure your words carry actual weight and respect.
This brings us to the HAIL framework. Think of this as your ultimate moral compass for speaking. HAIL. It stands for honesty, authenticity, which really just means being yourself instead of some highly rehearsed robot, integrity, and love. When you speak through these 4 pillars, people naturally just want to listen to you.
Let's zoom in on that last pillar for a second, because it's a bit unexpected. In this context, love doesn't mean anything romantic. It just means catching your mind's nasty, judgmental voice and actively choosing to change it. Treasure suggests this absolutely brilliant habit. When you're walking down a busy street, instead of getting all frustrated and mentally criticizing the people in your way, just silently say "bless you" to them in your head. Literally just wish them well. It sounds so simple, but it completely silences your inner critic and fundamentally changes the energy you bring to every single interaction.
Okay, Section 4, master your vocal toolbox. With your mental foundation set, it is time to start treating your physical voice like an instrument you can actually play.
It's tragic that most of us have absolutely no formal training in this. The single most ignored tool in your toolbox is your breath. Your voice is literally just breath moving across your vocal cords. Yet most of us take these shallow, tiny little breaths from our upper chest. But if you take deep, diaphragmatic breaths, picture a baby sleeping, right, with their stomach rising and falling, that instantly cures stage fright, settles your nerves, and gives your voice this grounded, confident power. It's a real game changer.
Next up, we have to talk about prosody. Because listen, if you speak in a completely flat monotone, you are guaranteed to lose your listener's attention. Prosody is the melody of your speech. It's the intonation, that up and down delivery, and the rhythmic pacing. It is route 1 for conveying emotion. Now, obviously, you have to be sensitive to culture here. Folks in Scandinavia might naturally use a bit less prosody than folks in Latin countries, for example. But injecting your own natural personality and melody into your words, that's non-negotiable if you want to keep people engaged.
And finally, there's timbre.
That's the actual physical texture of your voice. As humans, we naturally gravitate toward voices that feel like hot chocolate, right? Rich, dark, warm, smooth. But here's the really empowering part. If you feel like your voice is a bit thin or squeaky, no way, you are not stuck with it. You can actively warm up and improve your timbre with practice, better posture, or even a vocal coach. You absolutely can maximize your own unique instrument.
On to Section 5, the power of storytelling. Now that your instrument is perfectly tuned up, how do you structure your message so people actually care?
Look, forget just throwing dry facts onto a spreadsheet. We are quite literally neurologically wired for narratives. Treasure points to the most watched TED Talk of all time by Sir Ken Robinson. Sir Ken had this massive, complex thesis on the education system, but he anchored the whole thing with a tiny, 15-second story about a little girl drawing a picture of God, and it completely hooked the audience.
And that beautifully illustrates the exact formula you need for an engaging story. You've got to have a relatable protagonist, an unexpected challenge or an antagonist, a journey full of obstacles, and, this is absolutely crucial, you must withhold the ending to build curiosity. If you start a story and leave the resolution hanging for a few minutes, you completely bypass your audience's pure logic and hook them emotionally. They physically cannot stop listening because they just have to know how it ends.
Finally, Section 6, the art of listening. We arrive at the most crucial, yet totally neglected half of the communication equation. Because true communication isn't just about broadcasting.
Active listening requires a massive shift. We have to move from our natural urge to invalidate someone's experience to actively validating it. Think about it. When someone comes to us with a problem, our instinct is usually to smother it. We say, "Oh, don't be upset," or "That's nonsense." That is invalidation. Validating them means saying, "I understand why you feel that way," and actually acknowledging their unique perspective, even if you completely disagree with their conclusion. You have to step onto their island first before you can ever guide them anywhere else.
To practice this in the real world, Treasure tells us to deploy the RASA framework, R-A-S-A. First, receive. Give them your actual physical attention. Turn your body toward them. Make eye contact. Second, appreciate. Use little gestures, nods, and short noises like or okay to kind of oil the conversation. Third, summarize. Reflect back what they just said. This closes doors in the corridor of conversation so you can actually move forward together. And finally, ask. Ask thoughtful questions to truly understand where they're coming from.
Treasure hits the nail on the head when he says, listening is the sound of democracy. Because without this conscious, deliberate effort to listen and validate, we just end up in these isolated echo chambers of our own making. We cancel people, we retreat to our little silos where everyone already agrees with us, and we become entirely unable to grow, adapt, or resolve any real conflict. Honestly, listening is what allows us to coexist and move the world forward.
So, as you step into your very next conversation, your next meeting, or your next big pitch, I want you to ask yourself this one powerful question. What is the listening you are speaking into? Remember, every single person's listening is as unique as a fingerprint, based entirely on their mood, their background, and their biases. So are you adjusting your wonderfully tuned instrument to the unique human being standing right in front of you? It's time to stop just broadcasting, start truly connecting, and treat your communication like the master skill it absolutely is. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.